Question 1. Compliance review shows that during a critical phase of the Aligarh Muslim University entrance examination, an invigilator observed a candidate exhibiting signs of significant distress and subtly requesting assistance from the invigilator. The candidate appeared to be struggling with a particular question and made eye contact with the invigilator, gesturing towards their answer sheet. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the invigilator to take? Option A. Ignore the candidate's gestures and continue with general supervision, assuming the candidate will either figure it out or accept their inability to answer. Option B. Politely but firmly inform the candidate that no assistance can be provided and remind them of the examination rules, while continuing to monitor the examination hall for any further irregularities. Option C. Discreetly offer a subtle hint or clarification on the question to alleviate the candidate's distress and ensure they can complete the exam. Option D. Immediately confiscate the candidate's answer sheet and escort them out of the examination hall due to the perceived attempt to seek unauthorized help. Correct answer is C. Discreetly offer a subtle hint or clarification on the question to alleviate the candidate's distress and ensure they can complete the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between a student's perceived need for assistance and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to maintain positive relationships with students, especially during entrance exams, can create an environment where ethical boundaries might be blurred. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of fairness, honesty, and adherence to examination regulations. The correct approach involves upholding the integrity of the examination process by strictly adhering to the Aligarh Muslim University's examination rules and regulations. This means refusing to provide any unauthorized assistance, even if it appears to be a minor favor, or if the student is experiencing distress. The justification lies in the fundamental ethical obligation to ensure a level playing field for all candidates and to prevent any form of academic misconduct. AMU's examination guidelines, like those of most reputable institutions, explicitly prohibit any form of cheating or assistance during examinations. Upholding these rules is paramount to maintaining the credibility of the entrance examination and the university itself. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with hints or answers, even if done discreetly. This action directly violates the principles of academic integrity and the specific regulations of the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam, which mandate that all candidates must complete the exam independently. Such an action constitutes academic misconduct, undermining the fairness of the assessment for all other candidates. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request and continue with other duties without addressing the situation. While not directly providing assistance, this inaction fails to uphold the invigilator's responsibility to ensure a fair examination environment. It could be interpreted as tacit approval or a failure to enforce the rules, which is also a breach of professional duty. A further incorrect approach would be to report the student for minor infractions without first attempting to de-escalate the situation or understand the context, if appropriate within the examination rules. While vigilance is necessary, an overly punitive immediate response without considering the nuances of the situation, if the rules allow for any discretion, could be seen as unprofessional and lacking in judgment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the Aligarh Muslim University's examination regulations. When faced with a potential ethical dilemma, an invigilator should first assess the situation against these regulations. If a breach is apparent or suspected, the primary duty is to uphold the integrity of the examination. This involves a calm and firm refusal of any unauthorized assistance, followed by appropriate action as stipulated by the university's examination rules, which may include issuing a warning or reporting the incident. The focus should always be on maintaining fairness and the credibility of the examination process. Question 2. Governance review demonstrates that a student in their final year of a demanding program at Aligarh Muslim University has been accused of plagiarism in a critical assignment, a violation of the university's academic integrity policy. The student claims they were under immense personal stress due to family illness, which led to poor judgment and unintentional copying. Faculty advisor is aware of the student's difficult circumstances and is concerned about the impact of a severe penalty on their future career prospects. What is the most ethically and procedurally sound approach for the university to take? Option A. Expel the student immediately upon receiving the accusation to send a strong message about academic dishonesty, regardless of the student's personal situation or the need for a formal investigation. Option B. Impose a minor penalty, such as a warning, without a full investigation, to quickly resolve the matter and avoid further distress for the student and faculty. Option C. Overlook the alleged plagiarism due to the student's extenuating personal circumstances and the potential negative impact on their future, focusing instead on providing academic support. Option D. Immediately initiate a formal inquiry process as per university regulations, ensuring the student is informed of the allegations and their rights, and allowing them to present their defense, while considering all evidence objectively before determining any disciplinary action. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate a formal inquiry process as per university regulations, ensuring the student is informed of the allegations and their rights, and allowing them to present their defense, while considering all evidence objectively before determining any disciplinary action. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity, the university's reputation, and the personal circumstances of a student. The pressure to maintain high academic standards must be balanced with fairness and the potential for undue hardship. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision made is both ethically sound and compliant with Aligarh Muslim University's established rules and guidelines for student conduct and academic progression. The correct approach involves a thorough, impartial investigation into the alleged academic misconduct, adhering strictly to the procedures outlined by Aligarh Muslim University. This includes providing the student with a fair hearing, allowing them to present their case, and considering all evidence objectively. The university's academic integrity policy and examination regulations would be the primary guides. This approach is right because it upholds the principles of natural justice, ensures due process for the student, and maintains the credibility of the university's assessment system. It prioritizes fairness and evidence-based decision-making over immediate punitive action or undue leniency. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the student based on the initial accusation without a proper inquiry. This fails to provide the student with due process, a fundamental ethical and often regulatory requirement in academic institutions. It presumes guilt without evidence and bypasses established university procedures, potentially leading to an unjust outcome and legal challenges. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the alleged misconduct due to the student's difficult personal circumstances or the potential negative impact on their future. While empathy is important, it cannot supersede the university's responsibility to uphold academic standards and prevent academic dishonesty. This approach risks setting a precedent that academic integrity can be compromised for personal reasons, thereby undermining the value of degrees awarded by the university and violating its commitment to fair assessment. A third incorrect approach would be to apply a disproportionately harsh penalty without considering the severity of the offense or the student's prior record. This would be a failure of proportionality, a key ethical principle in disciplinary matters. The university's regulations likely provide for a range of sanctions, and the decision should be based on a careful assessment of the facts and the established disciplinary framework. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding and adhering to all relevant university policies and regulations concerning academic integrity, examinations, and student discipline. 2. Initiating a formal, impartial investigation process. 3. Ensuring the student is informed of the allegations and their rights. 4. Providing the student with a fair opportunity to respond and present evidence. 5. Gathering and evaluating all relevant evidence objectively. 6. Making a decision based on the evidence and in accordance with established university procedures and disciplinary guidelines. 7. Considering appropriate sanctions that are proportionate to the offense. 8. Documenting the entire process and decision. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that during the Aligarh Muslim University entrance examination, a fellow candidate, who is also a close friend, is visibly distressed and appears to be struggling significantly with several questions. This friend discreetly signals to you, making it clear they are seeking help with answers. Considering the strict examination regulations of Aligarh Muslim University, which emphasize academic integrity and fairness, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action? Option A. politely but firmly decline to provide any answers or hints, explaining that it would violate examination rules and compromise the integrity of the test for everyone. Option B. Offer to help the friend after the examination is concluded, suggesting they can ask you for clarification on the topics covered. Option C. Discreetly whisper the answers to the friend or pass them a note with the correct responses to help them pass. Option D. Advise the friend to simply guess randomly on the questions they are unsure about, hoping for the best. The correct answer is A. Politely but firmly decline to provide any answers or hints, explaining that it would violate examination rules and compromise the integrity of the test for everyone. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between a student's perceived need for assistance and the university's academic integrity policies. The pressure to perform well in a high-stakes entrance exam, coupled with a friend's distress, creates an ethical dilemma requiring careful judgment to uphold fairness and academic standards. The core challenge lies in balancing empathy for a peer with the responsibility to adhere to the Aligarh Muslim University's examination regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves politely but firmly declining to provide any assistance that could be construed as unfair or a violation of examination rules. This aligns with the ethical principles of academic integrity, fairness, and honesty, which are fundamental to the AMU's entrance examination framework. Specifically, AMU's examination guidelines, like those of most reputable institutions, prohibit any form of cheating or unauthorized assistance. By refusing to share answers or provide hints, the student upholds these regulations, ensuring a level playing field for all candidates and respecting the integrity of the examination process. This approach prioritizes adherence to established rules and ethical conduct over personal loyalty that could compromise academic standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. Providing answers or hints to the friend directly violates AMU's examination regulations concerning cheating and unauthorized assistance. This action undermines the fairness of the examination and devalues the efforts of other students who have prepared diligently. Ethically, it constitutes dishonesty and a breach of trust with the institution. Suggesting the friend guess randomly, while seemingly less direct than providing answers, still facilitates an unfair advantage. It encourages the friend to engage in a behavior that is not based on their own knowledge and preparation, thereby circumventing the intended assessment of their understanding. This approach indirectly supports a lack of academic integrity. Ignoring the friend's request entirely, while avoiding direct violation, can be seen as a failure to uphold a basic level of collegiality within the examination setting, though it is less ethically egregious than actively assisting in cheating. However, a more proactive and ethically sound approach would be to address the situation by reinforcing the importance of the rules, even if it means not directly helping the friend. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing similar situations should first identify the core ethical conflict. They should then consult relevant institutional policies and ethical codes, in this case, AMU's examination regulations. The decision-making process should prioritize adherence to established rules and principles of fairness and integrity. If a direct conflict arises, the professional should choose the path that upholds these principles, even if it means disappointing a peer. Communication is key. Clearly and respectfully explaining the reasons for the decision, referencing the rules, can help maintain relationships while upholding ethical standards. Question 4. Operational review demonstrates that a significant donation has been offered to Aligarh Muslim University, by a private foundation. The foundation's stated purpose is to advance research in a specific scientific field, but the offer is contingent upon AMU agreeing to appoint a specific individual, nominated by the foundation, to lead the research center funded by the donation, and to ensure that all research outcomes are published exclusively in journals approved by the foundation. Option A. Accept the donation and the conditions, assuming the foundation's intentions are benevolent and that such arrangements are common practice in academic funding. Option B. Inform the foundation that AMU cannot accept donations with such restrictive conditions and decline the offer outright. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive due diligence on the foundation and the nominated individual. Assess the implications of the appointment and publication clauses against AMU statutes, academic freedom principles, and relevant Indian regulations governing educational institutions and research, and present findings to the appropriate AMU governing body for a decision. Option D. Accept the donation immediately to secure the much-needed funding for the research center, and address any potential issues with the appointment and publication clauses later. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive due diligence on the foundation and the nominated individual. Assess the implications of the appointment and publication clauses against AMU statutes, academic freedom principles, and relevant Indian regulations governing educational institutions and research, and present findings to the appropriate AMU governing body for a decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term ethical implications of accepting a donation with strings attached. The pressure to secure funding for critical infrastructure projects can create a temptation to overlook potential ethical compromises. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with the principles of academic integrity and responsible governance. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process that prioritizes transparency, ethical considerations, and adherence to AMU's established policies and the relevant Indian regulatory framework governing educational institutions and charitable donations. This includes scrutinizing the donor's reputation, the source of funds, and the specific conditions attached to the donation to ensure they do not undermine academic freedom, create conflicts of interest, or violate any laws or ethical guidelines. The university must act in a manner that upholds its reputation and its commitment to its students and faculty. An incorrect approach would be to immediately accept the donation without adequate scrutiny. This could lead to several regulatory and ethical failures. Accepting funds without verifying their legitimacy or the donor's intentions could inadvertently involve the university in unethical or illegal activities, potentially violating Indian laws related to financial transparency and anti-corruption. Furthermore, agreeing to influence academic programs or research based on donor preferences would compromise academic integrity and violate the ethical principle of institutional autonomy, which is crucial for maintaining the credibility of any educational institution. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the donation and then attempt to retroactively justify the conditions, which demonstrates a lack of proactive ethical consideration and adherence to due process. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves identifying the ethical dilemma, gathering all relevant information about the donation and the donor, consulting university policies and relevant Indian laws and guidelines, seeking advice from legal and ethics committees, and evaluating the potential consequences of each course of action. The ultimate decision should be guided by a commitment to the university's mission, ethical principles, and legal obligations, ensuring that the institution's integrity is preserved. Question 5. Stakeholder feedback indicates a significant shortfall in funding for essential research facilities at Aligarh Muslim University. A prominent industrialist has offered a substantial donation, but with the implicit understanding that the university will prioritize research projects aligned with their company's commercial interests and grant their representatives a non-voting advisory role on the selection of these projects. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for the university administration? Option A. Accept the donation immediately to address the urgent funding gap for research facilities, while informally assuring the donor that their interests will be considered. Option B. Accept the donation and allow the donor's representatives to have a direct, albeit non-voting, role in the selection of research projects, trusting their expertise to guide the university's research priorities. Option C. Accept the donation but formally document all conditions and establish a transparent review process involving faculty and an independent ethics committee to assess the alignment of proposed research with the university's academic mission and ethical standards. Option D. Decline the donation outright due to the potential for conflicts of interest and the risk of compromising academic independence, and explore alternative, less restrictive funding sources. The correct answer is A. Accept the donation immediately to address the urgent funding gap for research facilities, while informally assuring the donor that their interests will be considered. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term ethical implications of accepting a donation with potential strings attached. The pressure to secure funding for critical academic programs can cloud judgment, making it difficult to uphold ethical standards and the university's reputation. Careful consideration of all stakeholders, including students, faculty, donors, and the wider community, is paramount. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process that prioritizes transparency, ethical alignment, and the university's core mission. This includes rigorously evaluating the donor's reputation, the source of funds, and any proposed conditions to ensure they do not compromise academic integrity, institutional autonomy, or create conflicts of interest. Adherence to Aligarh Muslim universities established policies on donations, ethical conduct, and financial transparency, as well as general principles of good governance and fiduciary responsibility, would guide this process. The university must ensure that any acceptance of funds serves the best interests of its academic community and upholds its values. An incorrect approach would be to immediately accept the donation without adequate scrutiny, driven solely by the urgent need for funds. This would represent a failure to exercise due diligence and could lead to reputational damage, erosion of trust, and potential entanglement in unethical practices if the donor's motives or the source of funds are questionable. Another incorrect approach would be to accept the donation, but attempt to conceal the donor's identity or the conditions attached. This lack of transparency violates ethical principles of openness and accountability, potentially leading to accusations of impropriety and undermining the university's credibility. Furthermore, accepting the donation with conditions that directly influence curriculum development or research direction, without a robust review process, would compromise academic freedom and institutional independence, which are fundamental to the university's mission. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves identifying the ethical dilemma, gathering all relevant information, consulting university policies and ethical guidelines, assessing potential risks and benefits, seeking advice from relevant committees or legal counsel, and making a decision that aligns with the university's values and long-term interests, prioritizing integrity and transparency above short-term gains. Question 6. Governance review demonstrates a potential discrepancy in the admission records of a significant number of applicants from a particular region, coinciding with a substantial donation offer from an influential alumnus associated with that region. The university is facing a critical funding shortfall. As a member of the admissions committee, you are aware of these circumstances. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action? Option A. Proceed with the admission process as usual, assuming the discrepancies are minor and unlikely to affect the overall quality of the admitted students, while focusing on securing the donation. Option B. Accept the donation immediately and address any admission irregularities quietly and internally after the funds are secured, to avoid jeopardizing the financial support. Option C. Initiate a thorough, impartial investigation into the admission discrepancies, documenting all findings and reporting them through the established university channels, regardless of the potential impact on the donation. Option D. Inform the donor of the potential admission issues and suggest they withdraw their offer until the matter is resolved, to maintain the integrity of the admission process. Correct answer is C. Initiate a thorough, impartial investigation into the admission discrepancies, documenting all findings and reporting them through the established university channels, regardless of the potential impact on the donation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fair admission processes. The pressure to secure funding could tempt individuals to overlook or downplay irregularities, creating a dilemma between institutional benefit and ethical responsibility. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing interests. The correct approach involves prioritizing transparency, adherence to established admission policies, and a commitment to fairness. This means thoroughly investigating the alleged irregularities, documenting all findings, and reporting them through the appropriate channels, even if it risks jeopardizing the funding. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty, integrity, and accountability expected of individuals within an academic institution. Specifically, it upholds the university's commitment to merit-based admissions and prevents the compromise of its academic reputation. An incorrect approach of overlooking the irregularities to secure funding would be a failure of ethical duty and potentially a violation of university statutes or regulations governing admissions and financial probity. It prioritizes short-term financial gain over fundamental principles of fairness and academic integrity, potentially leading to a compromised student body and long-term damage to the university's standing. Another incorrect approach of immediately rejecting the funding without a thorough investigation would be premature and potentially detrimental to the university's financial health. While ethical considerations are paramount, a balanced approach requires due diligence to understand the scope and nature of the irregularities before making irreversible decisions. A further incorrect approach of attempting to discreetly resolve the irregularities without formal reporting could be seen as an attempt to conceal misconduct, which is ethically unsound and could lead to more severe consequences if discovered later. It undermines the principles of accountability and due process. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the ethical conflict. They should then gather all relevant facts, consult university policies and ethical guidelines, and consider the potential consequences of each course of action. Seeking advice from a supervisor or an ethics committee, if available, is also a crucial step. The ultimate decision should be guided by a commitment to upholding the university's values and regulatory framework, even when faced with difficult choices. Question 7. Governance review demonstrates that the university is facing significant financial shortfalls. The administration proposes a strategy to subtly increase the difficulty of the entrance examination for general applicants, while simultaneously creating a slightly easier version for candidates whose families have pledged substantial donations, arguing this will boost both academic rigor and institutional funding. As a member of the examination committee, what is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Agree to the administration's proposal, but suggest making the difficulty difference between the exams very slight to minimize the appearance of impropriety. Option B. Remain silent on the matter, assuming the administration will proceed with their plan regardless of your opinion and focus on other aspects of the examination. Option C. Propose developing a separate, clearly designated special admission examination with a different format and content for candidates from donor families. Option D. Firmly refuse the administration's proposal, citing the paramount importance of maintaining the integrity, fairness, and equal opportunity principles of the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam, and communicate the potential reputational and ethical damage. The correct answer is D. Firmly refuse the administration's proposal, citing the paramount importance of maintaining the integrity, fairness, and equal opportunity principles of the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam, and communicate the potential reputational and ethical damage. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between the immediate financial pressure on the university and the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and transparency. The university's need for funding is understandable, but it cannot justify compromising the fairness and validity of the entrance examination process. The core ethical principles at play are honesty, fairness, and accountability. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the examination process above all else. This means refusing to implement any measure that could be perceived as unfair or that compromises the credibility of the entrance exam. Specifically, it requires clearly communicating to the administration the ethical and regulatory implications of altering the exam's difficulty or content for financial gain. This aligns with the fundamental ethical duty of professionals to uphold standards and act in the best interest of the institution's reputation and the fairness to all applicants. The Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam regulations, while not explicitly detailed here, would implicitly uphold principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity, which are jeopardized by such proposals. An incorrect approach would be to agree to the administration's request to subtly alter the exam's difficulty to favor candidates who can contribute financially. This would be a direct violation of ethical principles of fairness and honesty, and would undermine the meritocratic basis of the entrance examination. It would also expose the university to severe reputational damage and potential regulatory scrutiny if discovered. Another incorrect approach would be to propose a less direct but still unethical method, such as creating a separate, easier exam for a select group of candidates. This still violates the principle of equal opportunity and fairness, as it creates a two-tiered system for admission based on financial capacity rather than academic merit. A third incorrect approach would be to remain silent and do nothing, hoping the issue resolves itself. This inaction is also professionally unacceptable, as it fails to address a clear ethical breach and allows a potentially damaging situation to fester, implicitly condoning the proposed unethical action through silence. Professionals facing such dilemmas should employ a structured decision-making process. 1. Identify the ethical conflict. Recognize the tension between financial needs and ethical obligations. 2. Consult relevant regulations and ethical codes. Understand the specific rules governing the entrance examination and professional conduct. 3. Seek advice. Discuss the situation with a trusted senior colleague, ethics committee, or legal counsel if available. 4. Articulate the ethical imperative. Clearly state why the proposed action is unethical and what the potential consequences are. 5. Propose alternative ethical solutions. If possible, suggest ways to address the financial needs without compromising integrity. 6. Document all communications and decisions. Maintain a clear record of discussions and actions taken. Question 8. The assessment process reveals a candidate exhibiting signs of extreme distress during the Aligarh Muslim University entrance examination, including visible shaking, tearfulness, and an inability to focus on the questions, despite no overt signs of academic misconduct. Option A. Ignore the candidate's distress and allow the examination to continue uninterrupted, assuming it is a personal matter unrelated to the examination's integrity. Option B. Offer the candidate direct, informal assistance during the examination, such as providing water or a brief break, to alleviate their distress. Option C. Discreetly inform the examination invigilator and relevant university authorities to initiate a confidential inquiry into the candidate's situation, offering support if appropriate and ensuring fairness to all candidates. Option D. Immediately halt the candidate's examination and escort them out of the examination hall to prevent any potential disruption or perceived unfair advantage. The correct answer is C. Discreetly inform the examination invigilator and relevant university authorities to initiate a confidential inquiry into the candidate's situation, offering support if appropriate and ensuring fairness to all candidates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity, while also acknowledging the human element of student struggle. The pressure to perform well in the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam is immense, and candidates often face significant personal and familial expectations. The challenge lies in balancing the strict rules and fairness of the examination process with empathy for a candidate who may be experiencing genuine distress. A hasty or overly punitive response could have severe consequences for the student, while a lenient approach could undermine the credibility of the examination. Careful judgment is required to discern between genuine hardship and potential academic misconduct. The correct approach involves a measured and investigative response that prioritizes fairness and due process. This entails gathering information discreetly, consulting with relevant university authorities, and providing the candidate with an opportunity to explain their situation before making any decisions. This approach aligns with the principles of natural justice and the ethical guidelines expected within academic institutions, which typically emphasize fairness, transparency, and the right to be heard. Specifically, it respects the candidate's dignity and avoids prejudgment. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the candidate based on the observed distress without further investigation. This fails to consider that the distress might be due to external factors unrelated to cheating or academic dishonesty, such as a sudden personal emergency or severe anxiety. Such an action would be premature and could lead to an unjust outcome, violating principles of fairness and potentially university policy regarding student welfare and support. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed distress and proceed with the examination as if nothing were amiss. This neglects the professional responsibility to ensure a fair and equitable examination environment for all candidates. It also fails to address a potential issue that might require support for the student, which could indirectly impact the integrity of the examination if the student's distress leads to an inability to perform. A third incorrect approach would be to offer direct assistance or special treatment to the candidate during the exam based solely on the observation of distress. This would compromise the uniformity and fairness of the examination process, potentially giving the candidate an unfair advantage over others and violating the principle of equal opportunity. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve 1. Observation and documentation. Note the specific behaviors and circumstances objectively. 2. Consultation. Seek guidance from supervisors or designated examination officials. 3. Investigation. Discreetly gather more information if possible and appropriate. 4. Communication. Provide the candidate an opportunity to explain their situation in a private and respectful manner. 5. Decision-making. Based on all gathered information and university policies, make a fair and reasoned decision. 6. Documentation of decision. Record the decision and the rationale behind it. Question 9. The efficiency study reveals that a senior faculty member in the physics department, who has been instrumental in designing the syllabus and question papers for the upcoming Aligarh Muslim University Physics Entrance Examination, has a child who is also applying for admission to the same program through the same examination. The faculty member is aware of this situation. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action for the faculty member? Option A. Inform their child about the specific topics and question types that are likely to be emphasized in the examination, while still participating in its development. Option B. Disclose the conflict of interest to the admissions committee, but continue to provide input on general physics concepts, arguing that their expertise is crucial for the exam's quality. Option C. Continue to participate in the development of the physics entrance examination content, assuring colleagues that their professional judgment will not be compromised by their child's application. Option D. Immediately disclose the conflict of interest to the relevant university admissions committee and recuse themselves from all further involvement in the design, review, and evaluation of the physics entrance examination content and administration. The correct answer is D. Immediately disclose the conflict of interest to the relevant university admissions committee and recuse themselves from all further involvement in the design, review, and evaluation of the physics entrance examination content and administration. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential conflict of interest that requires careful ethical navigation within the Aligarh Muslim University AMU entrance examination framework. The scenario is professionally challenging because it pits the university's commitment to fair and transparent admissions against the personal interests of a faculty member. The faculty member's involvement in both the development of the entrance exam content and the potential for their child to benefit from that content creates a situation where impartiality is compromised. Strict adherence to ethical guidelines and AMU's internal regulations is paramount to maintain the integrity of the admission process and public trust. The correct approach involves immediate disclosure of the conflict of interest and recusal from any decision-making processes directly or indirectly related to the entrance examination content or evaluation where their child might be a candidate. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of transparency, fairness, and avoiding even the appearance of impropriety, which are implicitly expected in academic institutions like AMU. AMU's regulations, while not explicitly detailed here, would undoubtedly uphold these core values to ensure a merit-based selection process free from bias. Recusal ensures that the faculty member's personal stake does not influence the objective assessment of candidates, thereby safeguarding the fairness of the examination. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with developing the exam content without disclosing the conflict. This is a significant ethical failure, as it violates the principle of transparency and creates a direct avenue for potential bias. Even if the faculty member believes they can remain impartial, the mere existence of the conflict undermines the credibility of the examination process. Another incorrect approach would be to disclose the conflict, but continue to participate in the content development, arguing that their expertise is indispensable. This is ethically unsound because it fails to adequately mitigate the risk of bias. The appearance of favoritism, even if unintentional, can lead to accusations of unfairness and damage the reputation of AMU. A further incorrect approach would be to ignore the conflict entirely, assuming it will not affect their professional judgment. This demonstrates a lack of ethical awareness and a disregard for the university's commitment to fair admissions. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of university policies on conflicts of interest, a commitment to ethical conduct, and a proactive approach to disclosure. When a potential conflict arises, the professional should first identify the nature of the conflict, assess its potential impact on their duties and the integrity of the process, and then immediately report it to the appropriate authority within the university. Following the guidance of the university administration and adhering to established protocols for recusal or mitigation are crucial steps in maintaining professional integrity and upholding the principles of fairness and transparency. Question 10. Governance review demonstrates that during a recent Aligarh Muslim University entrance examination, an invigilator observed a candidate repeatedly glancing at a small, folded piece of paper concealed within their palm, which they quickly tucked away when the invigilator approached. The invigilator also noted the candidate seemed to be subtly mouthing words. The invigilator feels a strong personal conviction that this behavior is indicative of cheating, potentially due to a past negative experience with a similar situation. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action for the invigilator to take? Option A. Immediately confiscate the paper and disqualify the candidate from the examination. Option B. Discreetly observe the candidate for further suspicious behavior and make a detailed, objective report to the examination controller after the exam concludes, without any direct interaction with the candidate during the exam. Option C. Ignore the behavior, assuming it is not a serious infraction, to avoid disrupting the examination environment. Option D. Approach the candidate directly and ask them to reveal the contents of the folded paper. The correct answer is A. Immediately confiscate the paper and disqualify the candidate from the examination. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between maintaining academic integrity and responding to a perceived personal bias. The university entrance exam context demands strict adherence to established procedures and fairness for all candidates. The challenge lies in discerning whether the observed behavior constitutes a genuine ethical breach or a misinterpretation, and in acting appropriately without compromising the integrity of the examination process or unfairly disadvantaging a candidate. The correct approach involves a measured, evidence-based response that prioritizes the established examination protocols and fairness. This means documenting the observation objectively, reporting it through the designated channels within the university's examination framework, and allowing the appropriate authorities to investigate and make a determination. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness, impartiality, and due process, which are fundamental to any examination system. The university's own examination rules and regulations would typically outline procedures for handling suspected irregularities, ensuring a consistent and equitable resolution. An incorrect approach would be to directly confront the candidate or to make an immediate, unilateral decision about their eligibility based on a subjective interpretation of their actions. Directly confronting the candidate could lead to an escalation of the situation, potentially compromising the examination environment and creating an adversarial interaction. Making a unilateral decision, without following established procedures, bypasses the university's governance structure for handling such matters and risks an unfair outcome for the candidate, violating principles of natural justice and the university's own examination policies. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the observation altogether. This failure to report a potential irregularity, even if it turns out to be unfounded, could be seen as a dereliction of duty and could undermine the credibility of the examination process if the behavior was indeed inappropriate. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes 1. Objective observation and documentation of facts. 2. Adherence to established institutional policies and procedures for handling irregularities. 3. Reporting through the correct hierarchical channels. 4. Allowing for a fair and impartial investigation by designated authorities. 5. Maintaining confidentiality and avoiding personal bias. Question 11. Upon reviewing a student's anxious request for any hints or specific topics that might be heavily featured in the upcoming Aligarh Muslim University entrance examination, and knowing that you have access to preliminary, unreleased exam materials, what is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action? Option A. Forward the student's request to the examination committee without taking any personal action, leaving the responsibility to them. Option B. Provide the student with a list of topics that are likely to be covered based on your access to the preliminary materials to help them focus their studies. Option C. Offer general study tips and recommend broad subject areas without referencing any specific exam content, hoping it indirectly helps the student. Option D. Politely decline the request, explaining that providing any specific information about the exam content would compromise the integrity of the examination process and is against university policy, while suggesting legitimate study resources. The correct answer is D. politely decline the request, explaining that providing any specific information about the exam content would compromise the integrity of the examination process and is against university policy, while suggesting legitimate study resources. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between a student's perceived need for assistance and the university's academic integrity policies. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams can lead students to seek unethical advantages, while the institution has a duty to uphold fair and merit-based admissions. Careful judgment is required to balance support for students with the imperative to maintain academic standards. The correct approach involves upholding the integrity of the examination process by refusing to provide any unauthorized assistance or information. This aligns with the Aligarh Muslim University's commitment to fair selection and the ethical principles of academic honesty. Providing advance information about the exam content would constitute a breach of trust and a violation of the university's examination regulations, potentially leading to the invalidation of the exam and disciplinary action against both the student and the staff member. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with specific questions or topics that are likely to appear on the exam. This directly violates the principle of academic integrity and constitutes unfair advantage. Such an action undermines the credibility of the entrance examination and compromises the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to offer general study advice without any specific reference to the exam content. While seemingly innocuous, if the advice is tailored to steer the student towards specific areas known to be tested, it can still be construed as an attempt to provide an unfair advantage, blurring the lines of ethical conduct. A further incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request and not respond at all. While this avoids direct complicity, fails to address the ethical dilemma, and misses an opportunity to reinforce the importance of academic integrity and guide the student towards legitimate study methods. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to institutional policies. This involves clearly identifying the ethical conflict, consulting relevant university regulations regarding examinations and academic integrity, and making a decision that upholds these principles. Open and honest communication with the student, explaining the reasons for refusal and directing them to appropriate legitimate resources for preparation, is also a crucial part of the professional response. Question 12. Governance review demonstrates that a fellow student, facing a critical deadline for an important assignment, approaches you for help, expressing significant distress about their potential failure. They explicitly ask you to share your completed work or provide direct answers to the assignment questions, stating that they are overwhelmed and cannot complete it on time otherwise. What is the most ethically and professionally appropriate course of action? Option A. Complete the assignment for the student, presenting it as their own work to alleviate their immediate stress. Option B. Share your completed assignment with the student, advising them to make minor changes to avoid detection. Option C. Politely decline to share your completed work or provide direct answers, explaining that it would compromise academic integrity. Instead, offer to help them understand the concepts by explaining relevant material or directing them to university academic support services. Option D. Advise the student to inform the instructor that they are struggling and request an extension, without offering any academic assistance yourself. The correct answer is C. Politely decline to share your completed work or provide direct answers, explaining that it would compromise academic integrity. Instead, offer to help them understand the concepts by explaining relevant material or directing them to university academic support services. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between a student's immediate need for academic assistance and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to help a friend, coupled with the potential consequences for the friend if they fail, creates an ethical dilemma. Careful judgment is required to balance empathy with professional responsibility. The correct approach involves upholding academic integrity by refusing to provide direct answers or completed work. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and fairness inherent in educational institutions, specifically within the framework of Aligarh Muslim University's academic regulations and ethical guidelines. Providing unauthorized assistance constitutes academic misconduct. The university's rules are designed to ensure that all students are assessed on their own merit and understanding. Therefore, guiding the friend towards appropriate university resources, such as academic support services, or encouraging them to seek clarification from the instructor, is the ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action. This approach respects the rules, promotes genuine learning, and maintains the integrity of the assessment process. An incorrect approach would be to provide the friend with the answers or complete the assignment for them. This directly violates the principles of academic honesty and fair assessment. Such an action would undermine the value of the degree and create an unfair advantage for the friend, potentially leading to disciplinary action for both individuals under AMU's academic misconduct policies. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the friend's request, which, while not actively participating in misconduct, fails to uphold the ethical responsibility to guide a peer towards appropriate academic conduct and support. This passive approach misses an opportunity to reinforce ethical behavior and could inadvertently enable future academic dishonesty. Professionals in an academic setting should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to institutional policies. This involves 1. Identifying the ethical conflict, recognizing the tension between personal loyalty and professional integrity. 2. Consulting relevant policies, reviewing Aligarh Muslim University's academic integrity policies and ethical codes. 3. Evaluating potential outcomes, considering the consequences of each possible action for all parties involved and the institution. 4. Choosing the most ethical and compliant course of action, selecting the option that upholds academic integrity and provides appropriate guidance without compromising fairness. Question 13. Strategic planning requires careful consideration of potential funding sources. AMU is exploring a significant donation from a large corporation. However, there are public concerns and media reports suggesting the corporation has engaged in environmentally questionable practices in the past. The university administration is under pressure to secure this funding to support new academic programs. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible approach for AMU to take in this situation? Option A. Reject the donation outright due to the negative publicity surrounding the corporation without further investigation to avoid any potential reputational risk. Option B. Conduct thorough due diligence on the corporation's past practices and current ethical standing. Consult AMU's ethical guidelines and relevant Indian regulations, and if concerns are mitigated and alignment with AMU's mission is clear, proceed with transparency, disclosing the source of funding and any potential perceived conflicts. Option C. Accept the donation, but stipulate that the corporation must publicly address and rectify its past environmental issues before the funds are disbursed. Option D. Accept the donation immediately to secure the necessary funds for academic programs, as the university's primary mission is education and financial stability is paramount. The correct answer is B. Conduct thorough due diligence on the corporation's past practices and current ethical standing. Consult AMU's ethical guidelines and relevant Indian regulations, and if concerns are mitigated and alignment with AMU's mission is clear, proceed with transparency, disclosing the source of funding and any potential perceived conflicts. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it involves balancing the university's immediate financial needs with its long-term ethical obligations and academic integrity. The pressure to secure funding can lead to compromising ethical standards, making careful judgment crucial. The correct approach involves prioritizing transparency and adherence to the Aligarh Muslim University's AMU, established ethical guidelines, and the relevant Indian regulatory framework governing educational institutions. This means conducting thorough due diligence on potential donors, ensuring their funding aligns with AMU's mission and values, and disclosing any potential conflicts of interest. The ethical justification lies in upholding the integrity of the institution, maintaining public trust, and ensuring that academic decisions are not unduly influenced by external financial pressures. This aligns with the principles of good governance and responsible stewardship of an educational institution, as expected under Indian law and ethical codes for universities. An incorrect approach that involves accepting funding without proper scrutiny risks compromising AMU's reputation and academic independence. This could lead to situations where donor interests dictate curriculum, research priorities, or admission, which is ethically unacceptable and potentially violates regulations concerning the autonomy of educational institutions. Another incorrect approach, accepting funding from a source with a questionable reputation, directly contravenes ethical principles of association and could expose AMU to reputational damage and legal scrutiny. It suggests a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential negative implications for the university community. Finally, an approach that prioritizes securing funds at all costs, even if it means overlooking potential ethical concerns, demonstrates a failure to uphold professional responsibility. It prioritizes short-term financial gain over the long-term health and integrity of the institution, which is a fundamental ethical breach. Professionals in such situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the ethical dilemma. This involves consulting AMU's Code of Conduct, relevant Indian laws and regulations pertaining to educational institutions and charitable trusts, and seeking advice from legal and ethical counsel if necessary. The framework should then involve evaluating each potential funding source against these established principles and regulations, prioritizing transparency, integrity, and the long-term well-being of the university. Question 14. Examination of the data shows a slight but consistent decline in the average student performance metrics across several key undergraduate programs at Aligarh Muslim University over the past 3 academic years. The admissions committee is preparing its annual report for prospective students and is concerned that this trend might negatively impact enrollment numbers. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Manipulate or selectively interpret the data to create an impression of consistent improvement or stagnation, rather than a decline, to avoid deterring potential applicants. Option B. Postpone the release of the admissions report until further analysis can be conducted, hoping that future performance data might offset the current negative trend, thereby avoiding the immediate disclosure of the decline. Option C. Transparently present all relevant performance data, including the recent decline, alongside contextual information about any contributing factors or ongoing initiatives to address the trend, while adhering to Aligarh Muslim University's established data reporting guidelines. Option D. Focus the report solely on positive performance indicators and achievements from previous years, omitting any mention of the recent decline in average student performance metrics to maintain a favorable impression. The correct answer is C. Transparently present all relevant performance data, including the recent decline, alongside contextual information about any contributing factors or ongoing initiatives to address the trend, while adhering to Aligarh Muslim University's established data reporting guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to present a positive image of the university and the ethical obligation to accurately report data, especially when that data might reflect poorly on academic performance. The pressure to maintain rankings and attract future applicants can create an environment where data manipulation or selective reporting might be considered, even if implicitly. Careful judgment is required to navigate this pressure while upholding integrity. The correct approach involves transparent and accurate reporting of all relevant academic performance data, even if it indicates a decline. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and integrity, which are paramount in academic institutions. Specifically, adhering to the Aligarh Muslim University's AMU established guidelines for data dissemination and reporting, which would likely emphasize factual accuracy and avoidance of misleading information, is crucial. This approach ensures that stakeholders, including prospective students, parents, and governing bodies, receive a true picture of the university's academic standing, enabling informed decision-making. An incorrect approach of selectively highlighting only positive data points while omitting or downplaying negative trends would be ethically unsound. This constitutes a misrepresentation of facts and can mislead prospective students, potentially leading them to make decisions based on incomplete or false information. Such an action would violate the principle of transparency and could damage the university's reputation for honesty in the long run. Furthermore, it could contravene any internal AMU policies or broader academic ethical standards that mandate truthful reporting of institutional performance metrics. Another incorrect approach of fabricating or altering data to present a more favorable outcome is a severe ethical breach and potentially illegal. This not only misleads stakeholders, but also undermines the credibility of the entire institution and the academic process. It would be a direct violation of principles of academic integrity and could lead to severe repercussions for the individuals involved and the university itself. A third incorrect approach of delaying the release of the data indefinitely to avoid scrutiny would also be professionally unacceptable. While not outright fabrication, it still amounts to withholding crucial information and preventing stakeholders from making informed decisions. This lack of transparency can be interpreted as an attempt to conceal unfavorable results and erodes trust. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to transparency and accuracy. Professionals should first identify the core ethical obligations, which in this context include honesty and integrity in reporting. They should then consult relevant university policies and guidelines regarding data dissemination. If faced with pressure to present a misleading picture, they should advocate for accurate reporting, explaining the ethical and reputational risks of any alternative. Seeking guidance from senior colleagues or ethics committees within the university can also be a valuable step in navigating complex ethical dilemmas. Question 15. Assessment of a candidate's ethical response when a fellow aspirant, during the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam, discreetly signals for assistance with a question they are struggling with. Option A. Provide a subtle hint or a brief clue to help the friend answer the question, believing it is a small act of kindness. Option B. Ignore the friend's signal and continue with the exam without acknowledging their request. Option C. Agree to discuss the question with the friend after the examination is concluded. Option D. Politely but firmly decline to provide any assistance, explaining that it is against the examination rules and would be unfair to other candidates. The correct answer is D. Politely but firmly decline to provide any assistance, explaining that it is against the examination rules and would be unfair to other candidates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for assistance and the university's academic integrity policies. The pressure to perform well in a high-stakes entrance exam, coupled with the desire to help a friend, creates an ethically complex situation requiring careful judgment. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing empathy with the obligation to uphold academic standards. The correct approach involves politely but firmly declining to provide any form of unauthorized assistance. This upholds the principles of academic integrity, fairness to all candidates, and adherence to the Aligarh Muslim University's examination regulations. Providing answers or hints, even if perceived as helpful, constitutes academic misconduct and can lead to severe penalties for both the giver and receiver, including disqualification from the exam and potential disciplinary action by the university. The ethical justification rests on the duty to act honestly and with integrity, ensuring a level playing field for all aspirants. An incorrect approach would be to provide even a small hint or a subtle clue. This action, while seemingly minor, directly violates the spirit and letter of examination rules designed to assess individual merit. It undermines the fairness of the examination process and compromises the integrity of the results. Ethically, it is a breach of trust and a failure to act with probity. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the friend's request and proceed with the exam without any acknowledgement. While this avoids direct complicity, it misses an opportunity to reinforce ethical boundaries and could be perceived as a passive endorsement of seeking unfair advantage. A more proactive and ethical stance would be to address the request directly, even if briefly. A third incorrect approach would be to agree to help after the exam. This is also ethically problematic as it implies a willingness to compromise integrity under different circumstances and could still be seen as facilitating future academic dishonesty. The focus should always be on upholding ethical standards in the present moment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Recognizing the ethical conflict, identify the competing values and obligations. 2. Consulting relevant policies, familiarize oneself with the Aligarh Muslim University's examination rules and academic integrity guidelines. 3. Prioritizing integrity, uphold the principles of honesty, fairness, and academic rigor. 4. Communicating clearly and respectfully, decline the request in a manner that is firm but not accusatory. 5. Seeking guidance if unsure. If the situation is particularly complex, consider discreetly seeking advice from a trusted faculty member or examination invigilator. Question 16. Which approach would be most appropriate for the examination committee of Aligarh Muslim University when faced with a credible allegation that a candidate was found with unauthorized study material during the entrance examination, and the candidate claims they were unaware of its presence? Option A. Ignore the allegation as it is a common occurrence and focus on processing the majority of legitimate applications. Option B. Impose a minor penalty, such as a warning, without a thorough investigation, to avoid lengthy procedures. Option C. Conduct a formal inquiry, allowing the candidate to present their explanation and evidence, while reviewing the examination invigilator's report and any seized material, before making a decision in accordance with AMU's examination rules. Option D. Immediately disqualify the candidate and ban them from future examinations based on the presumption of guilt. The correct answer is D. Immediately disqualify the candidate and ban them from future examinations based on the presumption of guilt. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for assistance and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams can lead students to seek undue advantages, while university officials are bound by regulations to uphold ethical standards and ensure a level playing field for all applicants. Careful judgment is required to balance support for students with the imperative to maintain the integrity of the admission process. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation of the alleged misconduct, adhering strictly to the Aligarh Muslim University's established examination rules and disciplinary procedures. This approach prioritizes fairness, due process, and evidence-based decision-making. It aligns with the ethical obligation to treat all candidates equitably and to uphold the reputation of the university by ensuring that admissions are based on merit and genuine ability. Specifically, AMU's examination regulations would mandate a formal process for addressing allegations of unfair means, which typically includes providing the accused student an opportunity to present their case, examining any evidence collected, and making a decision based on the findings and the university's rules. This upholds the principle of natural justice and ensures that any disciplinary action is justified and proportionate. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the student based solely on suspicion or a single piece of circumstantial evidence without allowing for a proper defense. This violates the principle of innocent until proven guilty and fails to adhere to the university's procedural safeguards. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the allegation altogether, which would compromise academic integrity and potentially allow an unqualified or dishonest candidate to gain admission, thereby undermining the fairness of the examination for other applicants. A third incorrect approach might involve imposing a penalty without a clear understanding of the student's intent or the extent of their involvement, which could be disproportionate and ethically unsound. Professionals in university administration should employ a structured decision-making process when faced with such ethical dilemmas. This involves 1. Clearly identifying the alleged violation and the relevant university regulations. 2. Gathering all available facts and evidence impartially. 3. Providing the affected party with an opportunity to respond and present their perspective. 4. Consulting with relevant university authorities or committees as per established procedures. And 5. Making a decision that is consistent with university rules, ethical principles, and principles of fairness and natural justice. Question 17. Implementation of a revised examination protocol for a candidate claiming a specific learning disability in the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam, where the candidate requests an extended time limit and the use of a scribe, requires the admissions committee to navigate ethical considerations and university regulations. Option A. Grant the requested accommodations immediately upon receiving the student's self-declaration of a learning disability without further verification to ensure inclusivity. Option B. Offer the student a separate, simplified version of the examination that is not equivalent in scope or difficulty to the standard test to account for their claimed disability. Option C. Deny all requests for accommodations, citing the need for standardized testing conditions for all applicants without investigating the validity of the student's claim. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the student's request, requiring official medical or psychological documentation to substantiate the learning disability and the necessity of the requested accommodations, in line with university policy and fair assessment principles. The correct answer is A. Grant the requested accommodations immediately upon receiving the student's self-declaration of a learning disability, without further verification, to ensure inclusivity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for accommodation and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment practices. The admissions committee must balance its duty to provide equitable opportunities with the responsibility to uphold the standards of the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any accommodations granted are appropriate, justified, and do not compromise the validity of the examination process. The correct approach involves a thorough, individualized assessment of the student's request, seeking objective medical or psychological documentation to support the need for accommodation. This approach aligns with the principles of fairness and non-discrimination, ensuring that students with documented disabilities are provided with reasonable adjustments to demonstrate their knowledge and abilities without undue advantage or disadvantage. Such a process would typically be guided by university policies on disability services and examination conduct, which are designed to be compliant with relevant Indian educational regulations and ethical guidelines for admissions. The focus is on enabling the student to participate equitably, not on altering the fundamental nature or difficulty of the examination. An incorrect approach would be to grant the accommodation solely based on the student's assertion without verification. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness to other candidates who are assessed under standard conditions and could potentially undermine the integrity of the entrance examination. It also risks setting a precedent that could be exploited. Another incorrect approach would be to outright deny any accommodation without a proper review process, which could be discriminatory and violate the university's commitment to inclusivity and its obligations under Indian law regarding the rights of persons with disabilities. A third incorrect approach might be to offer an accommodation that fundamentally alters the nature of the test, such as providing answers or significantly reducing the scope of the assessment, thereby compromising the validity of the examination as a measure of the student's aptitude. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the university's established policies and procedures for handling accommodation requests. This typically involves a formal application process, submission of supporting documentation, and a review by a designated committee or office. The decision-making process should be objective, evidence-based, and focused on finding a balance between supporting the student and maintaining the integrity of the examination. When in doubt, seeking guidance from legal counsel or disability services experts within the university is advisable. Question 18. Quality control measures reveal that a member of the Aligarh Muslim University Admissions Committee has a close personal relationship with one of the applicants being considered for admission. The committee member is aware of this relationship and its potential to influence their judgment. What is the most ethically sound course of action for this committee member? Option A. Disclose the relationship to the committee and recuse themselves from the evaluation and decision-making process for that specific applicant. Option B. Advocate for the applicant's admission, subtly highlighting their strengths while downplaying any weaknesses due to the personal connection. Option C. Remain silent about the relationship and vote on the applicant's admission as if there were no personal connection. Option D. Evaluate the applicant as usual, believing their personal integrity is sufficient to ensure an unbiased decision, but mention the relationship in passing during deliberations. Correct answer is A. Disclose the relationship to the committee and recuse themselves from the evaluation and decision-making process for that specific applicant. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's reputation and the integrity of its admissions process against the potential for personal bias and the ethical obligation to ensure fairness. The admissions committee member faces a conflict of interest, as their personal relationship with an applicant could influence their objective evaluation. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity, which are fundamental to any educational institution's admissions policy. The correct approach involves recusing oneself from the decision-making process for the applicant with whom there is a personal relationship. This upholds the principle of impartiality and avoids any perception of favoritism. By stepping aside, the committee member ensures that the applicant is evaluated solely on their merits by an unbiased panel, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the admissions process and adhering to ethical standards of fairness and transparency expected in academic institutions. This aligns with the general ethical guidelines for professional conduct in educational settings, which emphasize objectivity and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with evaluating the applicant while disclosing the relationship, but believing personal integrity is sufficient to overcome bias. This fails to address the inherent risk of unconscious bias and the appearance of impropriety, which can erode trust in the admissions process. Another incorrect approach would be to remain silent about the relationship and vote as usual. This constitutes a serious ethical breach, as it involves deception and a direct conflict of interest, undermining the fairness and credibility of the admissions committee's decision. Finally, advocating for preferential treatment for the applicant, even subtly, is a clear violation of ethical principles and the university's commitment to merit-based admissions. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, objectivity, and adherence to established ethical codes. This involves identifying potential conflicts of interest, disclosing them promptly to relevant authorities or the committee, and taking appropriate action to mitigate the conflict, such as recusal. If unsure, seeking guidance from a supervisor or ethics committee is a crucial step. The ultimate goal is to ensure that decisions are made fairly, impartially, and in the best interest of the institution and all applicants. Question 19. During the evaluation of a candidate's performance in the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam, an invigilator observes a student discreetly attempting to signal for assistance with a question. The student appears distressed and is making eye contact with the invigilator, seemingly pleading for a hint. The invigilator is aware of the university's strict policy against any form of academic dishonesty. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the invigilator? Option A. Firmly but politely inform the student that no assistance can be provided and remind them of the examination rules, then continue to monitor the examination. Option B. Discreetly provide a subtle hint or clarification to the student to alleviate their distress and help them answer the question. Option C. Ignore the student's signals and continue with general supervision, hoping the behavior stops on its own. Option D. Suggest to the student that they can seek clarification or help after the examination is concluded. The correct answer is B. Discreetly provide a subtle hint or clarification to the student to alleviate their distress and help them answer the question. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for assistance and the academic integrity principles upheld by Aligarh Muslim University. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams can lead students to seek shortcuts, while the institution has a duty to ensure a fair and merit-based selection process. Navigating this requires a delicate balance of empathy and adherence to ethical guidelines. The correct approach involves upholding the university's examination regulations by refusing to provide any unauthorized assistance. This aligns with the ethical obligation of an invigilator to maintain the integrity of the examination process. Specifically, the Aligarh Muslim University entrance exam regulations, which are designed to ensure fairness and prevent malpractice, mandate strict supervision and prohibit any form of collusion or external aid. By adhering to these rules, the invigilator acts in accordance with their professional duty to the institution and all other candidates who are participating honestly. Providing the student with hints or answers, even if seemingly minor, constitutes a direct violation of the examination rules. This action undermines the fairness of the exam for all other students and compromises the validity of the results. It also sets a dangerous precedent, potentially encouraging further malpractice. Offering to help the student later or suggesting they try their best without addressing the immediate request for unauthorized assistance, while appearing sympathetic, still fails to uphold the strictures of the examination. The invigilator's primary responsibility during the exam is to ensure adherence to the rules as they are written and enforced at that moment. The professional decision-making process in such a situation should involve a clear understanding of the examination's rules and regulations. The invigilator must prioritize the integrity of the examination above all else. When faced with a request for unauthorized assistance, the immediate and only correct response is to firmly but politely decline, reminding the student of the examination rules. If the student persists or the situation escalates, the invigilator should follow the university's established protocol for reporting and handling exam malpractice, which may involve informing the examination controller or relevant authorities. Question 20. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a student applicant who is a relative of a senior faculty member failing to meet the minimum academic threshold for a postgraduate program at Aligarh Muslim University. The student's application is currently under review by the department, and the faculty member in question is aware of the upcoming admission deadline. Faculty member is considering whether to subtly influence the departmental review process to ensure the student's admission, despite the student's borderline academic performance. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the faculty member? Option A. Discreetly communicate with other departmental reviewers to highlight the student's potential and downplay any academic shortcomings, emphasizing the familial connection to ensure a favorable outcome. Option B. Advocate for a thorough and objective review of the student's application based solely on the published admission criteria, and if the student does not meet the threshold, communicate this outcome transparently to the student and the admissions committee, while recusing oneself from any direct involvement in the final decision if a conflict of interest is perceived. Option C. Advise the student to withdraw their application and reapply in a subsequent admission cycle, suggesting they focus on improving their academic profile without mentioning the familial connection. Option D. Inform the admissions committee that the student is a relative and request that their application be fast-tracked for review to meet the deadline, without a detailed academic assessment. The correct answer is B. Advocate for a thorough and objective review of the student's application based solely on the published admission criteria, and if the student does not meet the threshold, communicate this outcome transparently to the student and the admissions committee, while recusing oneself from any direct involvement in the final decision if a conflict of interest is perceived. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation. The pressure to meet admission deadlines, coupled with the potential for a student to fall short of the required standards, creates an ethical tightrope for the faculty member. The university's reputation and the fairness of its admission process are at stake, necessitating a decision grounded in established principles and regulations. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the Aligarh Muslim University's AMU established academic policies and admission guidelines. This means objectively assessing the student's performance based on the provided criteria and communicating the outcome transparently, regardless of the student's personal circumstances or the perceived urgency of their situation. AMU's regulations, like those of most reputable institutions, prioritize meritocracy and adherence to academic standards. Therefore, any deviation from these established norms, such as offering preferential treatment or manipulating assessment outcomes, would violate the principles of fairness and academic integrity, potentially leading to a compromised admission process and undermining the credibility of the university. An incorrect approach would be to succumb to the student's emotional appeal and overlook the academic deficiencies. This would represent a failure to uphold the university's admission criteria and could be seen as favoritism, thereby compromising the fairness of the selection process. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to subtly alter the student's academic record or provide misleading information to the admissions committee. This would constitute academic misconduct and a breach of professional ethics, potentially leading to severe disciplinary action for the faculty member and invalidation of the student's admission. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the decision-making entirely to the admissions committee without providing a clear and objective assessment of the student's academic standing, thereby abdicating professional responsibility. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to institutional policies, ethical conduct, and objective evaluation. This involves understanding the relevant university regulations, assessing the situation impartially, documenting all interactions and decisions, and seeking guidance from senior faculty or administrative bodies if ambiguity exists. The ultimate goal is to ensure that decisions are fair, transparent, and consistent with the university's commitment to academic excellence and integrity.